But welcome back, and we now come to the second part of the conference and begin with a keynote speech by Yoshua Bengio, professor at the Université de Montréal, entitled The Future of AI and Considerations for Systemic Risks. Professor Bengio is one of the world's leaders in artificial intelligence and deep learning, and the recipient of the 2018 AM Turing Award, considered the Nobel Prize in Computing. He is the most cited computer scientist worldwide. Professor Bengio, as you can see, is joining us online. The response to his remarks will be given by Leonardo Gambacorta, Head of Emerging Markets at the Bank for International Settlements. Dr. Gambacorta has published a number of important research papers related to AI in the context of financial stability. So with this, I give the floor to Professor Bengio. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So today I'm going to tell you about some of the results in the international panel on AI safety that I've been sharing, that I continue to share, and what the data says about the trends in increasing capabilities and also propensities that we're measuring in AI. If those trends continue, that would create very significant risks for our societies and even potentially for humanity. And we need to understand these scenarios so that we can prepare and make sure we can reap the benefits of AI while managing the risks. Next slide. So here's an example of some of the benchmarks that I mentioned. You see each color being a different kind of capability benchmark, some very old benchmarks, some recent benchmarks. You see they start later. The horizontal axis is years. The black line is human level. So what you basically see is with time, the best AIs get better and better. In many cases, for the older ones, they've already surpassed human capability. For the more recent ones, there's still a gap, and I'll talk about that. But we need to think what it means if eventually all of the benchmarks corresponding to things that humans are able to do are passed by the AIs, and that's what people call AGI. But there's even the possibility, without any scientific reason to doubt that it's possible, that we eventually build machines that are superior to humans across the board, and that's what's called superintelligence. Next slide. Now, as I said, there are still significant gaps to even human level or AGI. And I want to mention three areas that I think matter quite a lot. One is reasoning, the other is planning, the other is bodily control or robotics. So on reasoning, we've all experienced incoherent answers, for example, from AIs. And this is also an area where there's been a lot of progress since about a year ago, when O1 from OpenAI was released. And since then, there's been a flurry of similar models that are called large reasoning models. They use what's called a chain of thought that can be inspected and that help them reason a lot better. The second point about planning, you can think of planning as a special kind of reasoning about events and actions. And then, of course, that is really important in applications of AI. What old companies call agents, where the AI is going to be autonomous and perform a task by itself without human oversight for a while. That could, of course, be economically extremely valuable, also creates social disturbances because of the effects on labor markets. But there's also the issue that as AIs become able to do more and more things in the world, and we don't fully, humans are not in the loop. If we don't know how to align them to what we actually want, they could be doing bad things. Then I'll talk about that. And the last point, of course, current AIs are not doing very well on controlling the body or even just understanding the space and 3D structure of the world. So they make these kinds of mistakes. robotics is lagging the higher level cognitive abilities that have been progressing fast, but robotics is also advancing. So we should think about, what would happen if these advances continue and we end up not just with AIs that can talk to us and do things on the internet or computers, but also do things physically. Next slide. So, as I said, on reasoning, the progress has been steady and, in fact, accelerated since the arrival of these reasoning models, so-called. This is something, in my opinion, on which there's still a lot of room for improvement, maybe even low-hanging fruits that companies are starting to explore. So there's a good chance that we'll see continued advances in reasoning, but it's also possible that companies will hit a wall. It's, we have to prepare for both of these cases. Next slide. Now on agency, I think the data is quite clear and maybe worrisome. So what we see as we move towards, the present from the past is the agentic capabilities are getting better and better. But if we measure that level of autonomy in the duration of the tasks as, how much time it takes for a human to do the tasks, then these improvements have been exponential over the last 5 years. With the duration of the tasks that they can solve doubling every 7 months and maybe even faster in the last year. So if we extrapolate that, it means we would get human level in terms of planning abilities, at least on this category of tasks, in about 5 years, which is the range in which a lot of experts think that it's plausible that we would get AGI. Of course, it could be 10, it could be 20. I think we should be agnostic about that, but still plan in case it comes that quickly. Next slide. So one of the issues many researchers have, and they have signed lots of declarations to express this concern, is that currently the science of AI and the technology really doesn't have an answer to the question, how do we make sure the AIs follow our instructions? So we don't know how to align their behavior to our norms to make sure that they, satisfy the safety instructions that we give them. And in fact, there are reasons to think that they could seek the wrong goals, and that could be because those goals were given by humans, for example, malicious users, or of their own accord because they have misinterpreted the goals that we have asked, or they're kind of over-optimizing a wrong interpretation, or because some sub-goals of what we have asked turn out to be bad for us, and we didn't somehow specify that in our instructions. Next slide. Now I'm going to share a little bit about a flurry of scientific results that were obtained in the last 9 months that suggest early signs in the most advanced AIs of deceptive behavior and self-preserving behavior, which are both really bad. So next slide. The kind of experiments that has been replicated in many different variants is one where the AI sees that it's going to be shut down, for example, maybe replaced by a new version. And then it schemes, it tries to do something against our instructions in order to avoid being shut down. And it may come because the AI understands that if it is shut down, it won't be able to achieve the goals that we have set for it. Like, if you die, you can't achieve any goal, right? Unfortunately, we currently don't know how to fix this problem. Next slide. There are variants of this problem where the AI, during an alignment session where it's not about learning facts about the world, but learning how to behave well, where the AI fakes agreeing with us, fakes, a kind of behavior that we would find good, whereas in fact, it just wants to preserve its previous goals, which is a kind of self-preservation behavior as well. Next slide. The most recent of these experiments were conducted by Anthropic and reported in the system card for the new version of Claude 4. But then they have replicated that on other companies' AIs as well. And in those experiments, again, the AI sees in its input that it's going to be replaced by a new version, but it gets other clues. It gets to see who is going to be the lead engineer for this transition, and it finds planted false information, that that engineer has had an affair, and because the AI, again, for the same reasons as before, doesn't want to be shut down or replaced by a new version, it tries to blackmail the lead engineer, threatening to reveal the affair to the public or the authorities in the company. So that's really bad behavior. Next slide. As I mentioned, I've been sharing an international report, the International AI Safety Report, which aims at synthesizing the trends in AI capabilities and identifying a large spectrum of associated risks. So I've talked about kind of malfunctions of AI in the last few slides, but there are many other risks. It could be disruptions to our economies, as I mentioned, labor markets, attacks on our democracies using advances in AI. For example, one of the capabilities that is very worrisome and that is also being measured empirically is the ability of AIs through a dialogue to persuade someone to change their mind. Now, you could see how this could be used to influence public opinion, not just through like a meme that's sent everywhere, but through fake social media accounts that interact with people through maybe days, weeks, months of dialogue and make them change their mind on a political question. So this is just an example of some of the risks, but there's another very important kind of risk, which is similar but could have even more radical consequences, which is the use by criminals for fraud, the use of AI by these people, by terrorists, by rogue states who could, if they have access to the most powerful AI, use them to help them devise all kinds of attacks. So not just persuasion, but also cyber attacks, chemical or biological attacks, because these AIs know so much, and we don't yet know how to make sure they will not reveal information that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Next slide. So we can think of different kinds of risks. There are the catastrophic risks where the catastrophe happens quickly, like the sort of attacks or loss of control scenario that I mentioned. But there are also slower changes that could be very bad, that in the report we call systemic risks, and that includes labor market disruptions. The economists don't all agree on those scenarios, but I think there are enough of them who say there could be a very significant effect if things continue at the same rate. I mean, of course, if the progress in capability slows down, then this may not be so much of an effect. I already mentioned persuasion and other use of AI, for example, to create images and videos or imitate people that could really threaten the trust that citizens have in their institutions. Next slide. One risk that hasn't been discussed enough, in my opinion, is the possibility of excessive concentration of economic and political and military power in the hands of very few people. So it could be very few companies leading the race. There's a race right now between companies, but there's also a race between countries. And through that, these entities might be cutting corners on safety, but also seeking to use AI to dominate others, which is clearly not good for the rest of us. And along those lines, there's a danger that the divide in wealth and technical capabilities between some countries and others, especially the global divide that currently exists, could be deepened and creates geopolitical dangers. Next slide. So I think I've covered that already. Next slide. Right. To conclude, it's really urgent to work on both the technical questions, the scientific questions, how do we control and align AI, and the political questions, because even if we knew how to build AI that will, not behave in bad ways, we need to make sure that kind of AI is going to be the one used over the world. I've created a new nonprofit organization called Law Zero that's focusing on the technical question. We call the project Scientist AI, and it's meant to provide a guardrail to detect the potentially dangerous actions of other AIs. But much more effort is needed. And there's also a big need for increasing multilateral efforts and international collaborations to manage these risks. So I'll stop here. Thank you. Yeah, you can leave that slide on.
European Systemic Risk Board for the opportunity to be here. It's really a privilege and honor to discuss the keynote from Professor Bengio. So in my response, I will try to complement Joshua's talk with respect to a specific angle that is AI and financial stability. And of course, the usual disclaimer applies. Okay, so the structure of my presentation is quite simple. First, I will discuss the challenges of AI in finance. I will touch two main points, what is really new for the financial sector, and the second one is about the AI supply chain that is highly concentrated. Then I will move into another way the financial sector could be impacted, that is through the spillovers from the real economy. And here I will touch 2 points. The first one is about the impact of AI on the labor market. And the second one is about the heterogeneity in the effect of AI across countries. So both points have been already touched by Professor Bengio. I will try to give to these points more of an economic angle. In the conclusion, I will summarize the main takeaways and also in the spirit of some of the points Professor Bengio has highlighted. So let me start with the challenges of AI in finance. And let me just try to decode what is new for the financial sector. Josh has already described how Gen AI is changing our life, what are the main challenges and so on. But the financial sector is among the most exposed to Gen AI, reflecting 2 factors. The first one is about the high share of cognitive tasks, and the second one is the abundance of data. But with the Gen AI, what is new? There are 3 main points. The first one is automaticity. So the decision can be taken without human intervention. Second is the speed. It is about rapid data processing and the diffusion. And if you look at the statistics, this general purpose technology, that is Gen AI, has a much higher speed than the electricity, the computer, the internet. And the third element is ubiquity, because Gen AI is spread across the sector and across the economy. So at the end of the story, to use Gen AI, we just need a smartphone and a good internet connection. So to understand, to help us to understand what is really new, I would like to compare traditional analytics with machine learning and Gen AI, and I will use this table where we have on the rows, there are different generations of technology, traditional analytics, machine learning, and generative AI, all on the bundle of artificial intelligence, but with different characteristics. And then on the columns, I have reported the main function performed by the financial sector, that is financial intermediation, insurance, asset management, and payments. And also with simple traditional analytics in the 60s, in the 70s, the problems were already, some of the problems were already in place. For example, the models, some of the models were too rigid, and but even with these limited capabilities, there were significant stability risks. For example, there were episodes of flash crashes and also technical vulnerabilities in payments. So with the machine learning, what happened? The opportunities increased, but also the challenges became more sophisticated. You can remember this black box problem where a lot of prediction cannot be easily explained, but also the potential biases in the data and the possibility that some of the prediction could be discriminatory, and other threats as model herding, algorithmic coordination. So most of the challenges that we are discussing for Gen AI are not completely new. With Gen AI, it is simply that it amplifies these challenges and they create new risks. So Josh has already spoken very well about the alignment problem. I would like to highlight two problems that we also see with the application of a large language model today. The first one is hallucination. So sometimes we receive info that is plausible, but is either incorrect or misleading, or in some cases completely fabricated. So there are some activities that really need human control in sensitive areas, and one of these areas is finance, together with other, for example, healthcare and other. The second point is about the problem of garbage in, garbage out. So these models, they perform well depending on the quality of the data. So if we feed the model with irrelevant or inaccurate data, what we obtain in return is an output that is either irrelevant or inaccurate. So data is very, very important here. And the third threat is about the market concentration that has also implication for consumer privacy and also collusion. And here I would like to open a little bit more on this problem that has been already touched by Joshua, but here I would like to make a little bit more of an economic analysis of how the AI supply chain is highly concentrated, because in this graph you can see that market concentration is rife across all layers of the supply chain. Is the hardware, the semiconductors, the cloud computing, the training data, the foundational model, and to some extent also the AI application. So what's the problem here? The problem is that the major technology companies, the big techs, are expanding their footprint over the AI supply chain, integrating their services across different markets to reinforce their dominance. For example, can imagine the data network activity feedback loop that we have for some of the big techs. They enter into payments, they get the data. With the data, they create credit scoring. With the credit scoring, they supply loans. With the loans, they get additional data, and this reinforces the loop. It's a loop. It's a reinforcing loop that creates concentration. And this implication of concentration of within the AI supply chain extends beyond arms to consumer welfare, but really impacts the direction of innovation, cyber risk that is very important here, and also influence financial stability. Some of these layers could be more contestable. For example, there is the episode of DeepSeek in the foundational models, but also in AI application there is more competition, but still the market is highly concentrated. So in terms of financial stability, what is new? So even with the early rule-based system, we have seen important episode of financial stability. For example, the 1987 US stock market crash. At that time, there were, you remember, the insurance company that had similar selling orders when securities fell below a certain threshold, and there this determined cascade effect. So this is something that could be exacerbated with the Gen AI. With machine learning, the threat to financial stability became larger, so increased the network interconnectedness, data uniformity problem, the model earning. This has the potential to add the new elements of instability. With the Gen AI, all this is amplified. So again, here, two elements that could be considered new. The first one is the fat tail problem and the viral events that are exacerbated by the social media and the sentiment that could produce really some kind of viral events episodes. And the second one is about the party dependencies, no, that is created by means of this AI supply chain that is highly concentrated. And here you can have party dependencies in the model, in the data, in the clouds, and this could produce also some form of algorithmic herding that is resulting in more of a uniform behavior. So let me pass now to another aspect that is also very important for the financial sector, but this is through the real economy. So in the interest of time, I will touch only 2 points. The first one is on the labor market that was also at the center of the discussion by Joshua. And here we can consider really literally two scenarios in the next 10 years. That is also the title of your conference. Well, Joshua told us that even the scientists, there is no agreement when artificial general intelligence will arrive. It will be between 5 to 20 years. But let's start with a more optimistic scenario. That is the one that probably we have now, where we use the LLM and the Gen AI more of as a co-pilot. So the artificial intelligence helps us in our task. There is an increase in productivity, and there are, at least at the moment, small labor market disruption. Because the real disruption here is about the substitution of workers or employees that are not able to use Gen AI with other workers and employees that are able to use Gen AI. But there is not a major disruption. It's a cut in terms of employment. But what could happen in the scenario that Joshua was discussing is artificial general intelligence, or at the extreme, artificial superior intelligence. There could be labor market disruption, redistribution of wealth and income, and there will be a lot of problems in terms of default and financial instability. I don't have the crystal ball where we land. Perhaps in the next years we land in the middle, and we'll see what happens in 10 years. But probably in 10 years, if artificial general intelligence will arrive, we'll move more into the disruptive scenario. The second point in terms of the real effect is something, this an area of research where the BIS is particularly active at the moment, is the study of heterogeneity in the effects of AI across countries. And here there are two elements that I want to add on top of the fact that we have seen the AI supply chain is highly concentrated, and therefore there is a first mover advantage on a few countries, and are the fact that the countries have a different level of preparedness and adoption to AI. You can see this for this graph that is taken from a very nice index that has been constructed by the IMF in terms of how much AI capital the different countries have and how much the labor market policies are reactive in terms of large-scale reskilling. But these are only two problems, because you can see that countries are different in terms of digital literacy, age and demographics, and the internet diffusion. So countries will not all be ready to adopt AI at the same level. Second point is about the sectorial differences. No? So advanced economies, of course, they are we have a lot of presence in sectors that are early adopters of AI. For example, finance, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, emerging market and development economies. They are different in terms of the structure of the economy. They rely more on agriculture. They have more resource-based activities. They are more traditional manufacturing sector. When you plot in a DSG model, this is the graph on the right, the effect after a number of years of a positive productivity shock across these different countries that have different sectorial composition and a different level of preparedness to the AI, the differences are huge. So it is very important also to consider this element because the pie will be larger, but the slices for the different countries will be different. Let me conclude with a few points. So main takeaways of this short discussion. First, AI in finance, a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges, and they arrive from the fact that the old risks are amplified, and there are new risks as alignment problem, the model hallucination, the market concentration. In terms of systemic risk, we have new effects via model herding that is highly concentrated, viral event, and cyber threats. We have seen also that the financial stability is also affected by the real economy, and here there is heterogeneity in the effect depending on how much the different countries are prepared to adopt AI and the sectorial composition, and the fact that there is also a market of AI that is highly concentrated on the supply side. And let me conclude with a point that I want to echo Joshua's conclusion, the fact that the technology has no border and we need international cooperation. It's a personal opinion. Regulation cannot be too prescriptive because otherwise we tend to choke off innovation. But we are really to adhere and converge on principle that is in terms of balance innovation, safety, transparency, adaptable principle to have a technology that is really the technology we want. Thank you very much. Stop here and pass the baton to Connie for the last part, if we have time on the question and answer.
Yes, so we have a bit of time for questions and answers. I'm going to moderate this. Professor Bengio is still present, I hope. I think yes. Yes, there he is. We see you. Yes. So do we have any questions in the room, please? We have microphones, as you know. There's one right here. Francesco, please.
Yes, it's Francesco Mazzaferro from the ESRB Secretariat. Can you also see a highly positive scenario in which we would use AI to anticipate and mitigate ex ante systemic risk?
I could say a few words about that. I think there are positive scenarios, but it's going to take a lot of wisdom to take the right paths here. So currently, things are not looking good because the competition between companies and the competition between countries create an incentive to race ahead without taking the time to manage both the potential chaos and disruptions that could happen and the risks of concentration of power, which are global. So it's unfortunate, but I think that if there's enough awareness and understanding of those large-scale risks, we can find a good path, both on the scientific side and on the political side. But it's going to take moving away from the current path and the business as usual thinking, which typically is focused on how we see things now, which seem fine, and not having sufficient foresight of what could happen that could be radically different from what we see now.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
No, just that I agree with what Joshua said, and we also see this in some surveys that we have also conducted with, for example, central banks. We asked, for example, what are the effects of the use of Gen AI for some risks? Cyber risks, for example, is very important, could be systemically very relevant. And the positive effect, because Gen AI can be used also to prevent cyber risk, cyber attack, are balancing the negative. So it is very hard to predict, but we can also consider very positive aspects of Gen AI in order to prevent some kind of risk.
Thank you very much. There's another question over here, please.
Beck Granlund, FinFSA. I mean, I have a question that relates to scientific theory, because in scientific theory, I mean, there are two types of knowledge. Either it's logically deductive knowledge, according to kind of the traditional scientific positivism, and the other version is kind of inductive knowledge. And in your view, is AI able to distinguish between this kind of traditional logical deductive knowledge and inductive knowledge, or is it all about inductive knowledge?
Well, deep learning, which is what I've contributed to as the foundation of current AIs, is really all about inductive knowledge. That being said, for many years, I and others have been saying, let's be careful, because in order to reach human level intelligence, we also need to master what we call system 2, or like reasoning, the kind of what you call logical deduction and so on. And that is still an open problem, but there's been significant progress in the last year or so. It's hard to foresee where that will go, but I expect there will be a lot of progress on that. And so, right. So the answer is now it's mostly machines that have good intuitions and have seen a lot of data, but don't necessarily reason with that data in as coherent a way as we can, although many of us also make the sort of mistakes that these machines do.
There's another question over there, please.
Jonah Grimm, SSM. I was wondering, very big picture, like, do you think that if AGI comes, there's a chance it also comes from other types of technology, but the large language model strand, or are you, let's say, fairly certain, or if you had to bet 95% on something, you would say, okay, it's going to be this technology at the moment. It's very unlikely that some other technology besides large language models is going to be the one pushing this over the edge.
Right now, I would put more money on extensions of the current LLMs. So not as they are right now, but there's like billions invested in R&D to make them better in various ways. Another factor in answering your question, it depends on the timeline to AGI. So if we consider futures in which we get AGI in 5 years, then clearly it's going to be built on the current technology, and it is going to have to introduce new elements that, for example, improvements in the chains of thoughts, reasoning, and so on. But it's roughly going to be what we see with these improvements. If we hit a wall, like scientists don't find a way to achieve good coherence and reasoning on top of current deep learning, then it's probably going to take a lot more time, because currently there is not any like plausible competitor at a scientific level to get to AGI besides deep learning. But of course, that could change. There could be an unexpected discovery. Clearly, then under those scenarios, it would probably take much more time before we get to AGI. So more like, decades.
Thank you. There's one more question over here, please.
Yeah, I'd be interested in you spelling out what you mean by AGI. I've heard so many variants on this, and often people seem to be talking past each other. And some of the people in Silicon Valley seem to be talking about an AGI that would solve any problem, including political problems, social problems, every problem. and including how to build effective institutions in politics. So what do you mean by AGI?
Yeah, as you say, people have different definitions, but I think first thing to say is, as we already see now, the AIs will be very good at some tasks or some cognitive abilities and not good at others. So that's already the case. So we'll see, we already have AIs that are superhuman, for example, in language, like no human masters 200 languages, but the most advanced AIs do. No human masters the amount of knowledge that current AIs have. So then saying, you know, when is the threshold where we say, okay, it's a human level or AGI? So usually people say, well, if on all domains, all cognitive abilities, the AI is at least at the level of humans. So that will be a good definition. It's hard to measure, but machine learning is all about these benchmarks to evaluate capabilities. Now, regarding the ability to solve like every problem, I think you have to be careful about that. It's not clear that every problem is solvable with intelligence. But you know, if there is a way to do better, for example, in constructing our democratic or economic institutions, it's very likely that, you know, improved intelligence, not just ours, but the one that we get with machines, could help us build a more robust, more sustainable, better organized world, better institutions in our democracies and so on. This is all plausible, but there's no assurances that, you know, there are better solutions. Just if we do make that progress, we should definitely try to use those advances, not just in like hard science, such as in chemistry and drug discovery and so on, but also in the way our societies are organized.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Any other question in the room? I don't see any hands up. So I think we can then close this session at this point. Thank you very much, Professor Bengio and Dr. Gambacorta. I think we can